I always assumed my grandfather's attic would be a trove of old photographs and dusty war memorabilia, faded relics of the life he led before my time. And for a while, that assumption proved correct as I rifled through piles of yellowed papers, battered trunks, and boxes filled with moth-eaten clothing. I even found a few souvenirs from his service overseas, a tarnished pocket watch, ration coupons, and letters from a bygone era. All of it had a faint smell of age and neglect, tinged with the sweet musk of decaying paper. But at some point in the late afternoon, when the autumn sun beamed through a small, grimy attic window and cast specks of dust dancing in the air, I discovered something far more peculiar. A wooden box, smaller than a shoebox, its lid carved with a simple moon symbol. It sat tucked behind a trunk in the far corner, as if intentionally hidden from casual sight. My heart gave a small, inexplicable flutter when I lifted it from the shadows. Inside was a revolver, an old 6-chambered .38 with the barrel slightly worn. Nestled beside it, in a fitted groove, lay a single gleaming silver bullet. The bullet's surface looked almost polished, reflecting the sun in a way that normal ammunition never could. Beneath the weapon and bullet, an old diary with a leather cover lay tied shut with twine. My hands trembled with equal parts excitement and unease as I carefully lifted the diary out. This discovery was more than a curiosity. It felt like a secret. I set the box down on a rickety table and carefully untied the diary's twine. Its first page bore my grandfather's name, Thomas Grady, in his familiar looping script. The date scrawled below told me he'd begun writing these entries decades ago, long before I was born. A wave of odd apprehension washed over me. My grandfather never mentioned a diary, nor had he spoken of anything resembling a silver bullet. I glanced around the attic, half expecting some explanation to jump out of the shadows. All I saw were more dusty relics, silent as tombstones. Finally, I sat on an overturned crate and began to read. The first entries were mundane enough. Notes about small-town life, the difficulties of paying bills, the aches and pains of everyday existence. But as I flipped through, the tone changed. A creeping paranoia wove into his words. He wrote of long nights, of footsteps in the yard, of shadowy shapes he claimed lurked by the tree line. Soon he spoke of a creature that roamed beneath the moonlight, a beast he struggled to name. "I've seen it 3 times now," read one passage, inked in a shaky scrawl. "Its silhouette stands like a man, but the snout and ears belong to a wolf. It moves on 2 legs, then 4, then 2 again. Never can I catch it in full light, it's always half glimpsed. But I know what it is." He called it a werewolf, plain and simple. My rational mind balked at the notion. Yet my grandfather wrote with raw conviction. "Bullets don't harm it. I tried. I heard it yelp once, but it never bled, never fell. It ran off. Next time I'll be ready." He documented conversations with an old local recluse, someone rumored to know about curses and how to break them. That man had told him about forging silver into a bullet as the only surefire way to kill a werewolf. My grandfather's tone remained grim, but determined. "I paid him to craft it. Only had enough silver for 1 bullet, that's all I need." Then the final few pages turned frantic. Each full moon, the beast grows bolder. I see it stalking from the woods. Last night it pounded on my door, scratching. I prayed the locks would hold. The sun rose before it could break in. I'm running out of time. My hands shake. I can't sleep. I watch from the windows. Revolver loaded with standard rounds useless. Must keep the silver bullet hidden until the moment is right. The creature can't know I have it. The second-to-last entry described a harrowing chase. I cornered it in the barn, fired a shot with the normal bullet to startle it, then fumbled for the silver bullet. It lunged, God, so fast. I dropped the box. By the time I recovered it, the beast had crashed through the sideboards and escaped. Now it knows I have the bullet. It will come for me. The final entry, short and chilling. "No more illusions. I can't kill it in time. It's nearly the full moon again. I fear it knows exactly where the bullet is. If anyone finds this, be warned. Silver is your only chance. Don't let it slip away like I did. God forgive me." My heart thudded as I realized the date of that last entry was mere days before my grandfather's death. Officially, he died in his sleep from heart failure. But now I wondered if something else had visited him that night. A cold draft swept through the attic, ruffling the diary's pages. I closed the book carefully, my mind churning. The idea of a werewolf in these quiet suburbs seemed absurd, yet the sincerity of my grandfather's words unsettled me. I glanced at the revolver in its box, the single silver bullet glinting in the dying sunlight. My grandfather believed he faced something monstrous, and he believed that bullet was his only hope. Dusk descended swiftly as I finished clearing out the attic. My thoughts were consumed by the diary's revelations. Once I'd locked up the attic, I brought the revolver, bullet, and diary downstairs to my study. The rest of the day felt surreal. My wife asked if I found anything interesting upstairs. I lied and said, just some old photos and letters. I didn't want to worry her or sound insane. All evening I couldn't shake the sense of being watched. I kept imagining some feral shape lurking outside the windows. I told myself it was just leftover anxiety from reading my grandfather's desperate journal. Yet even normal nighttime sounds, branches scraping the house, the wind moaning through gutters, took on an ominous edge. Finally, bedtime came. My wife turned in early, and I, still restless, decided to stay up reading in the living room. The book on my lap was some thriller I'd been meaning to finish, but my eyes kept drifting to the desk, where the wooden box sat in plain view. The knowledge of that single silver bullet weighed on my mind. Shortly after midnight, I must have dozed off on the couch. I woke to darkness. The lamp I'd left on had fizzled out. A quick glance at my phone showed it was 2:14 a.m. The house was silent, except for a faint rustling from outside. I wondered if it was the wind or a neighbor's cat. Then I heard something heavier, a soft, deliberate noise like footsteps brushing across the lawn. My pulse quickened. My logical side insisted it was just an animal rummaging in the trash, but the hairs on my neck stood on end, recalling the diary's lines. It will come for me. I tried to calm myself, but the fear was potent. The old floor creaked as I rose and peered through the window blinds. Darkness pressed against the glass. If something was out there, I saw no sign of it. I told myself, stop being ridiculous. Nonetheless, I fetched the revolver from the desk. My hands shook slightly as I opened the cylinder. 5 empty chambers, plus 1 loaded with a standard bullet. The silver bullet still rested in the wooden box. Should I load it? Did I even believe enough to do that? After a moment's hesitation, I pulled the silver bullet from its groove and placed it gently into the 6th chamber, rotating it into position. The metallic click echoed in the hush. A strange sense of reassurance, however irrational, washed over me. If there was anything to my grandfather's story, I at least had the means to defend myself now. Cradling the gun, I returned to the couch. Slowly, exhaustion overcame my adrenaline, and I drifted back into a fitful sleep. At dawn, the house was bathed in sunlight, and my fears seemed foolish under the bright sky. My wife bustled around the kitchen making coffee. I joined her, bleary-eyed. She asked if I was all right, noticing my tense shoulders. I shrugged, blaming it on too many hours in the attic. The day passed uneventfully, yet an underlying unease trailed me like a shadow. Work obligations forced me to leave home for a few hours, and I felt oddly reluctant to go. Part of me didn't want to leave my wife alone in the house, but she assured me she'd be fine. We live in a safe neighborhood after all. Our biggest threat is usually raccoons tipping over trash cans. During lunch, I found myself reading an online forum about local legends and folklore. I half expected to find absolutely nothing about werewolves in our area. Surprisingly, I stumbled on a handful of references to old sightings, hushed rumors of a wolfman in the forests decades ago. One article, dated from the 1950s, mentioned livestock found torn apart, mysterious howls at night. My pulse fluttered. Could my grandfather's cryptic hunts tie into those old rumors? The rational side of me kept objecting. People see coyotes or wild dogs. They exaggerate. But the creeping possibility lingered. For now, I chose not to confide in anyone about this mounting sense of dread. Who would believe me? That evening, my wife went to visit a friend, leaving me alone at home. The lonely quiet weighed heavily on my nerves. I holed up in my study with my grandfather's diary, determined to re-examine every clue. Perhaps there was a reference to a location or some detail about the beast's patterns that might reassure me this was all in the past. Midway through the pages, I found a section I'd somehow overlooked. My grandfather described how he once tracked the werewolf to an abandoned foundry on the edge of town. He wrote, "I cornered it there among rusted machines. Moonlight poured through a broken skylight. It howled, an unearthly cry that froze my blood. I fired thrice normal bullets. No effect. It seemed to laugh. My only escape was to leap out a shattered window. Twisted my ankle. The beast let me go as though mocking me. He believed it was playing with him, letting him live so he'd lead it back to the silver bullet." My grandfather's guilt permeated the entries. He felt he'd endangered the whole family by failing to kill the creature. One bullet to do the job, but if I miss, or if it gets me first, who will protect them? I have to end this soon. He died before he could. My chest tightened with sympathy for the terror he must have felt. I wondered if he ever faced the beast on that final night, if he aimed the silver bullet only to run out of time. Or did the werewolf simply slip in under his guard, taking revenge? A rap on the window made me jump. My heart thundered. I stared at the glass nothing there, possibly a branch tapping in the breeze, or some bird landing on the sill. I exhaled, forcing my shoulders to relax. My imagination was in overdrive. Nonetheless, I kept the revolver on my desk for easy reach. The silver bullet now felt more like a curse than a blessing, a responsibility I never asked for. Days slipped by in uneasy calm until the night of the full moon arrived. I hadn't realized it was so close until I noticed the moon, huge and pale, cresting over the horizon in the early evening. A sense of foreboding settled over me like a weighted blanket. My grandfather's fear about this particular lunar phase came roaring back. My wife planned a dinner out with friends that night. She had no clue about my anxious obsession, and I didn't dare sabotage her plans. So, after an awkward farewell, I was alone again in the house as darkness fell. The shadows seemed to multiply in every corner. I tried watching TV, but the flicker of the screen only heightened my nerves. By 9 o'clock, the moon was high, painting the backyard in silver light. I found myself patrolling from window to window, scanning the yard. The revolver never left my side. That was when I saw it. A flicker of movement at the far end of the lawn near the fence. My heart leapt into my throat. Something large and dark, moving on 4 legs. Could be a stray dog, I told myself. But it had that unnatural gait, a hunched shape, broad shoulders, then a narrow waist. The head jerked up to face the house, and even from inside I felt the intensity of its gaze. I froze, pressing my face to the glass. The shape slunk forward, crossing into a patch of moonlight. My breath caught. It was no ordinary dog. Its limbs appeared too long, the posture too erect. Moonlight glinted off eyes that felt far too intelligent. A wave of primal terror shot through me. The werewolf was real. It had found me. The creature lurched forward another few paces, then stopped. It raised its muzzle slightly as if scenting the air. Slowly it turned back toward the fence, melted into the darkness, and vanished. My knees nearly buckled in relief, though my pulse still hammered. Why did it leave? Perhaps just a recon like a predator testing boundaries. Shaking, I retreated from the window, unsure what to do. Should I call the police? They'd laugh me off. Or perhaps they'd come, find nothing, and assume I was delusional. My best chance, if the beast returned, was that single silver bullet. But fear gnawed at me. What if I miss? For hours, I paced, listening. Outside, the wind rustled branches, occasionally creating illusions of movement. Midnight came and went in quiet dread. Eventually, exhaustion wore me down, and I collapsed into my bedroom, revolver clutched in my hand. I told myself I'd rest my eyes for just a moment. Sometime in the night, I snapped awake with an acute sense of wrongness. The digital clock read 3:47 a.m. My bedroom glowed faintly from the street lamp outside. A hush blanketed the house. No hum of the fridge, no tick of the old clock in the hall. Everything was unnervingly still. Then I heard it. Slow, heavy breathing from the other side of the bedroom door. My pulse slammed in my ears. The door stood closed, a thin barrier separating me from whatever was out there. Each breath sounded deep and guttural, resonating with an animal's power. I lay paralyzed for a second, the revolver somewhere near my pillow. Carefully, I groped for it, never taking my eyes off the door. Something brushed against the door, causing it to creak softly. My mind conjured an image of massive claws scraping the wood. The breathing continued, ragged, as if the creature was sniffing for my scent. I forced my trembling fingers around the revolver's grip. The silver bullet was chambered, ready. My grandfather's final words pounded in my head. It knows where the bullet is. Yes, it knew, and it had come. For a moment, I considered blindly firing through the door, but if I missed or only wounded it, I'd lose my advantage. My breathing grew shallow. The doorknob rattled slightly, as though tested by a clawed hand. Sweat beaded on my forehead. My chest felt too tight. Suddenly the breathing paused. The silence was worse. My imagination filled the gap with terrifying possibilities. Then there was a low, guttural snarl, so close I could almost feel the vibration. Adrenaline seized me. I had to act. Gritting my teeth, I flicked off the safety, an aftermarket modification on the old 38, and aimed at the door. My voice shook as I shouted, "Go away! I'm armed!" The words sounded pathetic, echoing in the stillness. Another snarl answered, deeper, like a mocking response. Could I catch it by surprise if I flung open the door? Or was that suicide? My only chance to deliver a lethal shot might be face to face. But every part of me rebelled at the thought of coming so close to the monster. My heart hammered so violently I worried I might faint. The doorknob twisted again, stronger this time. The hinges groaned. I pictured the beast's massive shoulder ramming the wood. Another minute or two of that, and it might force its way in. My mouth went dry. I can't wait forever. I have to do something. Summoning every scrap of courage, I slid off the bed and inched closer to the door. My footsteps made the floor creak. The breathing quickened. Holding the revolver steady, I planted my left hand on the knob. This was madness. Yet if I could fire point blank at the creature's heart or head with the silver bullet, I might stand a chance. With a cry born of terror and desperation, I yanked the door open and thrust the gun forward. The hallway lights were off, but moonlight from a window partially illuminated the silhouette crouched before me. A hulking, wolf-like figure rising to nearly my shoulder height, fangs bared, eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. Its fur bristled in a ragged mane around its neck, and one arm, yes, arm, not a foreleg, stretched forward, nails clicking on the floor. Time slowed. The beast recoiled in surprise, lips peeling back in a snarl that exposed rows of sharp teeth. My breath caught in my throat. My hands moved on instinct, aiming the revolver at its chest. The beast lunged. I fired. The recoil slammed my arms. The flash lit the hallway. In that strobe of light, I saw the bullet strike home, right in the creature's torso. A deafening roar shattered the silence. My ears rang. The monster's momentum carried it into me, sending me sprawling backward onto the bedroom floor. Its weight crushed me. I screamed, wrestling with an arm corded with muscle and fur. Its jaws snapped inches from my face, spittle flecking my skin. The stench of decay and wet animal fur overwhelmed me. My mind shrieked that the silver bullet was my only chance, and I'd already fired it. Either it worked, or I was dead. The beast convulsed, letting out a guttural moan. Its claws raked my arm, ripping through cloth and into flesh. Pain seared. My vision blurred. But then it let out a strangled whine and lurched off me, staggering into the hallway. It slammed into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Another roar, this time tinged with what sounded like agony. Shaking, adrenaline roaring in my veins, I scrambled to my feet, revolver still in hand. The creature sagged, panting heavily. Dark fluid thicker than blood dripped from the wound in its chest. The bullet hole sizzled, almost smoking. The silver was hurting it. With a final furious glare, the beast tried to raise itself. I stumbled forward, pointing the gun. No more rounds that mattered, only standard bullets that wouldn't kill. But maybe I could slow it enough. My trembling finger started to squeeze the trigger again. The werewolf crashed sideways, smashing a table in the hallway. Another tormented snarl echoed. Then, in a surge of motion, it bounded on all fours toward the back door. I followed, stumbling, leaving a trail of blood from my torn arm. In the kitchen, the creature slammed into the door with a splintering crack, burst outside, and vanished into the moonlit yard. I collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. My entire body shook violently. It was over. I'd fired the silver bullet. It must have wounded the creature enough to drive it off, but apparently not enough to kill it instantly. My heart sank as I realized the gun was now empty of the only bullet that could truly end it. The beast was gone, injured but possibly still alive. My ragged breathing was the only sound. In the distance, a dog howled a lonely, keening note that made my stomach twist. Trembling, I pressed a hand to my shredded arm. Blood seeped through my fingers, but it wasn't fatal. The real danger lay outside, in the dark. My phone was in the bedroom. I needed an ambulance, or at least someone to help me patch up this wound. My wife would be home in a few hours. But what if the creature returned first? Dawn eventually arrived, painting the sky in muted hues. Sirens wailed outside. I'd managed to call 911, stammering about a wild animal attack. The paramedics found me sitting in the foyer, pale and shaking, dried blood crusted on my arm. The back door was a ruin of splinters. They questioned me, but I gave them only vague answers about a big wolf that broke into my house. The local police seemed baffled. They found footprints in the yard huge. Definitely not a normal canine, but no sign of the animal. Blood droplets near the fence indicated it was wounded. I insisted they check the bullet hole in the hallway wall, but my shots had only gone into the creature. The cops took my statement, probably assuming I was traumatized or hallucinating details. They confiscated the revolver temporarily to run ballistic checks. I nearly panicked at the thought of losing that precious silver bullet, but it was already used anyway. All that remained was the spent casing. My wife rushed home, frantic, to find me bandaged up in the hospital. The doctors said I was lucky, no major arteries severed, though the claw marks required stitches. I told her a half-truth about a wild animal, left out the more supernatural details. She was both relieved and terrified, urging us to get a security system, maybe even move somewhere safer. Part of me knew no amount of locks or alarms would stop a creature like that if it came back. Days turned into weeks. My physical wounds mended slowly, but the nightmares persisted. Every night I dreamt of claws scraping my door, of a monstrous shape looming in the moonlight. I pored over my grandfather's diary again, searching for any mention of a second bullet or some final instruction. Nothing. He'd pinned all his hopes on that single silver round. And now it was gone. Life tried to return to normal. Insurance covered the repairs to the door. The police eventually returned my grandfather's revolver, after verifying it was lawfully inherited. They said no large wolf had been found, but a few local farmers reported livestock killings. The leads went cold. The official story pinned it on a rogue dog or coyote, but I knew the truth. That battered old gun in my closet was worthless for the threat that lurked out there, licking its wounds and biding its time. The werewolf had survived. My nights were full of tension whenever the moon grew bright. I'd stand by the window, revolver in hand, empty of silver, wondering if the beast would appear among the shadows. More than once, I glimpsed a fleeting silhouette beyond the fence, but it never approached. In a final, desperate measure, I tried to contact the old recluse my grandfather wrote about. No success. If that man was still alive, he was untraceable. I checked antique shops, asking if they could craft silver bullets from scratch. They laughed me off. A few even said it was illegal or at least highly irregular. My search led nowhere, and so I remain in a state of uneasy vigil, haunted by the knowledge that the monster is out there watching. My grandfather's last words echo in my mind. I ran out of time. It knows where the bullet is. Indeed, I fired that bullet, and the beast took the brunt of it, yet it didn't die. So now it knows I'm armed with an empty gun, that I pose no real threat. Perhaps it's waiting for the day it fully heals, for the moon to rise once more, to exact revenge. Late one night, after a few months of uneasy quiet, I sat in my study, trying to distract myself with mindless tasks. My wife was asleep. The house once again was silent under the moon's pale glow. A single lamp lit the desk. I had the revolver close by, though its hollow chambers offered little comfort. I nearly drifted off when I heard a tap soft at first, then louder, on the back door. My body went rigid. Another tap. Something scraping the wood. The werewolf, Had it returned? My heart thundered, hands clammy around the useless gun. I rose, forcing each step. The corridor leading to the kitchen felt endless. The floorboards creaked beneath me. My mouth went dry. A third tap, slow, deliberate. I reached the corner and flicked on the kitchen light. The door's glass pane revealed darkness outside, but a large shape blocked part of the view. Swallowing, I edged closer. A silhouette stood beyond the glass, tall and broad, hunched in a predatory stance. A pair of reflective eyes glowed faintly, catching the dim interior light. My mind screamed to run, but my feet stayed planted. The handle of the revolver felt cold as ice in my grip. Then the shape pressed closer. I heard its ragged breathing, the faint scratch of claws on the door's frame. For an agonizing moment, neither of us moved. A single barrier of glass and wood separated me from the savage creature. Slowly it raised an arm, a thick furred limb ending in lethal claws. The nails tapped the glass once, twice, as though mocking me. My heart hammered, each beat a countdown to disaster. Was it waiting for me to open the door? Or was it simply toying with me, savoring my terror? I lifted the revolver, aiming at the glass, even though I knew it was futile. I had no silver left. The creature's eyes narrowed, its lips curling into a silent snarl. Drool glistened on its fangs. I realized that if it smashed through the door, I was as good as dead. Or worse, we stood locked in that standoff, man and beast. My entire life shrank to that moment, adrenaline roaring in my veins. I recalled my grandfather's final entry, lamenting the bullet he never got to use. I had used it, and it wasn't enough. The werewolf let out a low, rumbling growl. With a surge of savage power, it raked its claws down the door, leaving deep gouges in the wood. I jolted back. It could tear through if it wished. But then, in a sudden turn, the beast spun away, disappearing into the night with swift, loping strides. The only evidence of its visit were the fresh claw marks in the door and my hammering heart. I sank to my knees, shaking uncontrollably. It's alive, and it's not done with me yet.